Hey guys, happy Thursday, or whatever day you are happen to watching our video here, since this is another episode of Modern Meta Breakdown. Now, we've been going for a while now, seen a lot of top decks, a lot of fringe decks, just kind of hopping all over the place. We've had a lot of requests from players, kind of asking, hey, can you highlight this video? Hey, I really appreciate that you've highlighted this, because now I'm getting into this deck and getting into Modern, and this one really stands out to me, so I really want to play this one. So I'm really glad that these videos are able to help all of you guys out as newer players or existing players that maybe aren't being able to play as often. But I wanted to highlight a couple of decks that people are still requesting, that they are in the works, don't worry, taking turns. There was some sweet ones at the GP. Sadly, we're not going to talk about that tonight. Grishol brand, or Grishol brand, however you want to say it, graveyard based deck, pretty sweet. Sadly, we're not talking about that tonight. We will be talking about a graveyard based deck. 8-Whack, the Goblins, a tribal based deck, really aggressive, really in your face. I actually lost to that last night at Tuesday in the final round. But we're not talking about that either. We're actually going to be talking Living End, guys. That's right. Our sorcery, Living End, got some sweet art for it. One of the couple of suspend cards that sees play in Modern. It's a pretty sweet one. So figured we don't talk too much about this deck. It's not on a lot of people's radar. So I figured this would be the perfect time to discuss it. Has been doing pretty well, based on what sort of hate is running around. Does even better. If there's a lot more graveyard hate, then you're not going to see Living End do as well. But definitely a sleeper in their powerful deck. Kind of in the mindset of ad nauseam. A lot of people don't think about it right away, but it's still a powerful deck. So the whole thing of Living End is each player removes all creature cards from his or her graveyard from the game. Then they sack all the creatures that they control, put those cards that were removed from the game into play. Simple and easy. So let's talk about the deck. Got two to show you. Pretty simple and easy. We got some sweet new additions from Amonkhet because cycling did return. So I figured, hey, this is the perfect time. We'll discuss what exactly this deck does, how you can combat it, and kind of, ways that you might want to build it sitting at home. The best description I've had of Living End was it's a bunch of draft commons and uncommons thrown together in a deck. And you think, you're like, what? That doesn't sound good at all. But actually it does, especially in the fact that a lot of the creatures in this deck cost 4, 5, 6 mana. So you're like, something's wrong here. But we know that we can cheat all of these guys into play, and pretty much every creature this deck runs, with a few exceptions, has cycling. So we've got our 3 Architect of Will. See, it costs 4. Don't care about that. That does not matter. What we care about is the cycling. Costs 1, either blue or black, to cycle it. Discard it into your graveyard. Draw a card. Comes in as a 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you look at the top 3 cards of target player's library and put them back in any order. That is a pretty sweet ability. Deadshot Minotaur. Costs 5 for a 3/4. When he comes into play, deals 3 damage to target creature with flying. Or you can cycle it for a red or a green. Cool. Turn 1. Cycling it. Nice. Same thing with Architect of Will. Fulminator Mage. One of the few non-cyclers in here. Very sweet, powerful card because easy to get in the graveyard. Right? Pay 3 mana. Destroy your land. Hey, now I have a creature in my graveyard that I can come back with Living End. Sweet. One of our new additions, Horror of the Broken Lands. Costs 5 for a 4/4. Of course, you can cycle it for 1 black. Pretty simple, pretty easy. But whenever you cycle or discard another card, Horror of the Broken Lands gets +2/+1 until the end of the turn. So the deck is full of cyclers. Makes a lot of sense that he would become pretty big pretty quickly with that. Especially if you're saying, okay, cast Living End, get this guy back, get like maybe 2 more guys back. Awesome. Now my next turn, I'm going to cycle a bunch of stuff and get him even bigger and just kill you in 1 turn kind of thing. Monstrous Carapid. Costs 5 for a 4/4. And he has to attack each turn if able. Cycle it for a red or a black. You can see these nice draft commons here. Cost 5 mana for a 4/4. Alright, that's kind of what I want in Modern, right? No, that's not really what you want. Shriek Maul, one of our other non-cycling cards here. Cost 5 for a 3/2 with Fear, so it can't be blocked except for artifacts or black creatures. When he enters the battlefield, destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. Or you can do the evoke cost for 2. If you cast the spell for its evoke cost, then you must sacrifice it when it enters the battlefield. But you just basically get that trigger. Enter the battlefield, pay 2, kill that off. Alright, he's dying. Which works out great when we're casting our Living End. Bring it back. Simian Spirit Guide. Another non-cycler in here, but this is our accelerator. You can see, hey, you know what? Turn 2, I've already cycled 3 cards. You're starting to get out of hand. Maybe I'm playing against a creature-based deck. Well, let's wipe the board. I'm going to ramp in Simian Spirit Guide to get to my Cascade. And we'll talk Cascade next. Street Wraith, cost 5. This one probably most people are familiar with after seeing how well the Death Shadow deck is going. And one of these days I will do an updated Grixis Death Shadow, because the previous Death Shadow lists that I've talked about for Modern Meta Breakdown have been the Jund, the Abzan versions of it, and haven't really talked Grixis. So I figure we'll have to highlight that in the coming weeks. So as you can see, pretty much all of our cyclers are red, black, green. That's what we need. Architect of Will, we're going to ignore that blue altogether. It's pretty much just cycle for a black. Land base, 19 lands, 1 forest, 2 swamp, Blackleaf Cliffs, okay, comes in untapped, 2 or fewer, just going to get right to the cycling. 1 Blood Crypt, 1 Bloodstained Mire, got a nice fetch land, 4 Blooming Marsh, 1 Overgrown, 1 Stomping, and 4 Burn. So you can see lots of fast lands, not very many shocks in here, but lots of fetches to go around with your stuff, because, you know, you're going to be going quick, get a lot of stuff in your graveyard. We've got our Cascade spells. Like, here's our list, 3 Living End. We already talked about that. But we've got our 8 Cascade spells, which is Violent Outburst or Demonic Dread. And for those that maybe did not play the game before, have never really seen the Cascade mechanic, because it doesn't see very much play in Modern nowadays. Pretty much its main focus is on this Living End deck. Now, there are some kind of fun stuff you can do with Cascade and do some things along that line. Cheating in suspend stuff is kind of the best way to do it. But the way it reads is, when you play this spell, remove cards from the top of your library until you remove a non-land card that costs less. So Demonic Dread, Violent Outburst, both cost 3. So you're looking for something that costs 2, 1, 0. Guess what? Living End's converted mana cost 0. So that is nice. Put the remove card on the bottom, you may play it without paying its mana cost, and then put all the other remove cards on the bottom in a random order. Violent Outburst also can give your creatures +1/+0. Demonic Dredge can say target creature can't block this turn. So those can be slightly, relevant when it comes down to it, and you need that extra point of damage. You need to make that creature not be able to block, because they can cascade into a Living End and say, alright, I'm not going to cast it. You may play it without paying its mana cost. Alright, cascade, reveal Living End, not going to cast it. Let's put all those cards in the bottom in a random order. Cool. So that's the objective. Cycle all of these creatures, find a Violent Outburst, find Demonic Dredge, and then reveal Living End. You never want to have Living End in your hand as a player. You've also got that Beast Within as a nice little addition in here. Costs 3, destroy target permanent. If its controller creates a 3/3 green beast token. Can get rid of planeswalkers, artifacts, enchantments, things like that. Works really well because people pack some hate. Rest in Peace, Leyline of the Void, Relic of Progenitus. Guess what? Now you have a 3/3 beast instead of that. So that is nice. Do want to make a note before we get to the sideboard, some other hate that you might be packing, because we're talking graveyard hate. A lot of the stuff that you would think of works pretty well, with the exception of Grafdigger's Cage. So let me pull that up. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I should have had it ready for you guys. I don't know what I was thinking here. Grafdigger's Cage, and bam. Alright. Pull that back up. And living in... There we go. Alright, let's pull up the image so you guys can see what Grafdigger's Cage actually has to offer for us. So, Grafdigger's Cage. Dun, 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 dun. Creature cards can't enter the battlefield from the graveyard or library. Players can't cast cards in the graveyard or libraries. So, how does that work with Living In? It doesn't. Does not stop Living In the least bit. So, a lot of people that are new to this matchup will go, oh, sweet, I've got this great graveyard hate card sitting in my sideboard. Going to game 2, I lost game 1, he just overran me with all of his creatures. Alright, let's bring this in. And then you sit there and throw it down turn 1 and smile at your opponent going, ha, I've got you now. And they just kind of shrug, cycle, cascade into Living In, exile all those cards from their graveyard, and then they enter play from exile. They're not entering play from the library, they're not entering play from the graveyard, so it gets around Grafdigger's Cage. Yeah, that does happen. So when you're thinking about the deck, how does it really work? It is a go wide strategy. I'm going to cycle all these stuff the first couple of turns here. You can cycle during your opponent's turn, you can cycle during your turn. Sweet. Discard this, draw a card, discard this, draw a card, discard this, draw a card, discard this. Now I've got 4 or 5 creatures in my graveyard, and while you've been building up this board state, getting these aggressive creatures out, or getting your planeswalkers out, whatever you might be doing, all that's going to be destroyed. And if you don't have anything in your graveyard, guess what? Now you're sitting down and facing down these big dumb dudes here. 3/4, 2/2, 4/4, 4/4, 3/2, 3/4. Like, these guys are together, add up very quickly, especially in Modern, where it's very easy for people to just go fetch, shock, be willy-nilly with their life. They're using it as a resource like they should, but once you go, okay, cascade into Living In, sweet, now I've got 4 4/4s on the battlefield, pass turn, and you sit there and go, well, now I have no creatures, okay, maybe I can play 1 creature now, cool, and then they go, alright, cool, one of my creatures happens to be the Horror of the Broken Lands, so I'm going to cycle a couple more things, move to combat, swing in, you're going to block this Horror, and then take, 12 damage. Oh, are you dead yet? No? Alright, cool. Well, let's pass over and we'll do it again. And it's powerful. Like, you can cascade on turn 2 with Simian Spirit Guides into a Living In if you need to. But that's the thing. It's like, you as a Living In player, you never want this in your hand. You really need it in your deck to cascade into. So if you get stuck in a position, you can suspend it. If the game goes long and grindy and weird, you can suspend it for 3 turns. It does cost 4 mana to do that, so maybe you get stuck in a weird position where you just get all the mana and you keep cycling into it and not getting any of your cascade spells. Hey, you can still do that. So sideboard stuff is going to be along those same lines that we saw. What graveyard stuff can I take advantage of? So Brindle Boar's in here, cost 3 mana for a 2/2, sack it, gain 4 life. Okay, cool. I'll pay 3 mana to gain 4 life, no problem. And then, guess what? I can cascade into a Living In, and I'll gain 4 more life off of it, essentially. Our Ingot Chewer costs 5. Some people have, been adding it in the main board, depending on what their meta looks like, but it's just a perfect sideboard card if you think about it. Enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact. Cool, you can evoke it for 1. Yeah, just like with our Shrink Maw. Pay 1, it dies. Second Shrink Maw in there. For Leyline of the Void, graveyard-based strategies, mirror matchups, stuff like that. Cool, shut those down. Ricochet Trap costs 4, but if your opponent casts a blue spell this turn, you can pay 1 red rather than pay Ricochet Trap's mana cost, and change the target of target spell with a single target. And then Lost Legacy is a nice addition. Name a non-artifact, non-land card. Search target player's graveyard, hand, library for any number of copies of it. Exile those. That player shuffles his library, then draws a card for each card exiled from hand this way. So, pretty nice. If they have 1 card in their hand, cool, they'll draw 1 card. If they have 2 cards in their hand and 2 in their deck, cool, they'll draw 2 cards. Simple, easy. So nice little hates kind of packed in here, but that's the objective of the deck, doing these cycle things. Now, there's not a specific way to combat all these cyclings for Modern. Like, you really have to rely on stuff like Lay on Void, Rest in Peace, things like that to kind of interact with it. Relic of Progenitus is nice, just slowly just chip away at it, and then when they cast something like Living End, that's when you exile both players' graveyards. And so you need those sort of setups, but you have to be careful of stuff like Beast Within. So, you know, it is a fine line to tread when you're playing against a deck like this. So this is the second place list. Wanted to show you guys another one. Pretty much you can see very, very similar. Boom, boom, boom. What is the difference here? Only one Beast Within main board. Cool. So what else is it running? A couple more creatures. You can see the numbers here. 27 jumps up to 30. We added a couple more. So what did we add in? Let's see. Okay, Architect of Will. Cool. Still there. Aha! A new Cycler. Amonkhet, providing us other stuff besides our Horror of the Broken Lands. Cost 6 normally for a 6/4. Wow, that's a big dumb dude. Yep. But you can cycle for 1 red. So now you could have a 6/4 coming at you pretty quickly. Our Fairy Macabre here, 2/2 for 3. It's got a flying, so nice evasion. But you can discard it and exile 2 target cards from graveyards. So you can get rid of something your opponent might have, and this works nicely if you're sitting there going, okay, I'm playing Living End, and they have ways to get stuff into their graveyard. Maybe I'm playing against Affinity, which is a very difficult matchup because of Arcbound Ravager, and they can just sack their board when you cast Living End, and go, alright, sack my board, all this is in my graveyard now. Okay, let's do it. They're all back now. And a lot of my stuff has evasion, where yours doesn't. But this allows you to discard it, and then exile 2 cards from their graveyard. So you can be able to do that. Plus, you're just saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to discard it, chip away your graveyard, and now I have a 2/2 flyer in my graveyard when I cast Living End. Works out nicely. Only 2 Fulminator there. 4 Horror of the Broken Lands. Again, it's a sweet one. Great inclusion. And, like, you see, both are Desert Ceradon, I always mispronounce these names, Desert Ceradon, and our Horror of the Broken Lands as our big new additions from Amonkhet to the deck. And what people go, oh man, it's new cycling stuff. There's got to be something that I can do for Living End to make it work a little bit better, and then they're trying this stuff out. Again, playset of Monstrous Scarabid, Simian Spirit Guide, and Street Wraith in there. Lands, pretty much similar. What you'd expect to see. We've got our fast lands, we've got our fetch lands or shocks, but this is a new addition. Grove of the Burn Willows can manipulate life totals and stuff like that. Have your opponent gain a life, just little things. So, or just tap it for a colorless. But yeah, Beast Within, again, cascading into Living End is the name of the game. Sideboard, not too different that we'd expect to see. More Beast Within. This is a pretty sweet one though. Dead and Gone deals 2 damage to target creature, or return target creature you don't control to its owner's hand. So a very non-red ability with that Gone. Basically you unsummon it. Cool. So that's kind of the idea of Living End, is like discard my whole hand to draw cards, replenish my hand, find Violent Outburst, find Demonic Dreg, cast it. Now I have a bunch of guys, turn them sideways. So if you want a creature-based deck that is a little bit more nuanced to it than just play a guy, pass, play a guy, turn both of them sideways, pass, okay, play 2 more guys, turn all 4 of them sideways, like Merfolk is kind of thing. You know, this is definitely a way to go about it. Street Wraith is a little bit more expensive because of its inclusion in Death Shadow and stuff like that, but for the most part, the deck is relatively cheap. So, you know, definitely something to think about if you're looking into Modern, looking into how to deal with different decks in Modern. That's definitely one to kind of keep in mind of, oh yes, I definitely need at least some sort of graveyard hate, and Grafdigger's Cage is not the only hate that I should have in case I run into something like that. And if you go to a bigger tournament, you are likely to find a couple of players that are running it. So that's going to do it for this episode of Modern Meta Breakdown. I hope you guys have been enjoying it. Started doing some vintage drafting for your viewing pleasure, guys. We're going to start doing that as breaking it up draft video, which you guys can see on the screen. Then next Monday, which is in a couple days, 4 days, 5 days, whatever it is, we'll upload match 1. Then the next week, match 2, match 3, just so get extra content coming out at the beginning of the week, in addition to our stuff at the end of the week of Modern Meta Breakdown. But again, weekly coverage on Mondays as well, Modern Magic Mondays, Twitch and YouTube.com. Check those stuff out if you guys want to see some weekly coverage and content that I've got going on over there. But that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you guys are following, subscribing, all that good stuff. I really appreciate the discussions, interactions, and questions you guys are asking in chat. Keep that up. I'd love to interact with you guys and get your insights on what decks that you're playing, what other decks that you want to be seeing for upcoming episodes. But that's going to do it for us here tonight, guys. I'll see you guys next game.